everyone, this is just a quick video that I thought I'd put together just to show about 10 of the cheap, and by cheap I mean under $100 mods that I've made to my bike to make it more adventure friendly. So I'm just going to run through them in order, sort of top to bottom. What I did to my levers, which are the factory levers, grips, mirrors, alloy pegs, the modifications some of you may not know about spinning around your brake tip, tyre pressure monitoring system, Sidestand foot extender, and then just some of the things about adjustments that aren't going to cost you anything but can make a big difference to how the bike rides and feels for you. And pre-filters and oil filters, and what I did to go to a single front disc. So yeah, I'll just run through those in order now. I've gone for a modification on my levers just to make it so that you can keep a couple of fingers on the grip while you're using them. And on the standard levers, which are actually a really good quality lever, they have a point where if you fall over without a guard on and the lever gets too much pressure on it, it'll break. So all I did on both sides was cut it at that point, and what it does is it allows you to have a couple of fingers on the grips and pull the clutch all the way in. So it's not as good as a one finger clutch, and obviously on mine it works quite easily because of the Camel extender, but that's over $100 here in Australia, so I won't include that on this video. You do also have to make sure that you've got the right amount of slack in your system before it starts to take up, and that is not this adjustment, not this lever adjustment, but actual slack in the system and slack down here at the lever end. You actually want to make sure that you've got enough slack there, and also enough room backwards that your lever can go outwards a little bit without touching your tank. So it's actually critical to get this right, because inside here is a power assisted slipper clutch. Now what that does has two functions. If you are decelerating, the inner hub of it actually moves up on ramps, disconnects a little bit of the pressure off your clutch, and actually allows your clutch to slip to stop your back wheel from locking up and hopping, and that's the slipper clutch side of it. But it's also a power assisted slipper clutch. In the other direction, it actually locks in, and the ramps actually pull in to the clutch basket, and it actually applies more clamping pressure. When it does that, it actually needs to have a little bit of slack here for the arm to move outwards. So you do need to make sure that your adjustment is correct here to have no problems with your clutch. So since I touched on it and we're looking at it, I will talk about the Camel Clutch Arm, because at around $100, I've got to say that this made the biggest difference to me. Not simply because it made the clutch easier to pull in so I can go to less fingers, but because it extended the amount of feel that you have up here in the clutch engagement zone. So with the original leverage ratio, you had a very short period where it was disengaged and engaged, whereas with the Camel Arm, it's actually a longer clutch engagement period on your lever, so you can actually modulate it a little bit better when you're climbing, and it really does make a big difference. I'm not sure why the engineers went with such a short throw. To be fair, you do have to have your clutch all the way in, and by all the way in I mean all the way, like pulled in completely to your levers to be able to find neutral. So, you know, that is probably why they did it, so that it has a easier time to fully disengage and find neutral. But yeah, so that's the Camel. So while we're up here, a couple of cheap modifications that make a big difference to how your bike feels. Like I say, with the levers, you want to keep a couple of fingers gripping on your lever while you're riding off-road and modulating your clutch. But another thing is, you know, if you go to a motocross style grip, these are Pro Grip 791s. They've got a waffle on the front to stop your hand from slipping, and they're smooth on the back for long periods riding. You know, we just did 6,500 kilometers, and I've got to say this is my second set. I put these ones on about 10,000 kilometers ago, not long before the trip, and I've done 1,000 k's since. You want to be connected to your bike, but you also don't want to have a death grip on it, because that's quite fatiguing. And what you've got here is a little bit more mechanical grip, and also a little bit more you know, ability to hold loosely but not have your hands slip around. So you know, for 23 bucks, I actually think these are great. I've already got another pair there for when these ones wear out. They're starting to lose their waffle here, so they'll get cut off and another pair will get put on. I did have to shave on the throttle side. When you take the original grips off, there are molded plastic ridges on the throttle side, which I just shaved off and then sanded to get that smooth. You just cut the end of the grips off, slide them on, glue them on. These ones are glued. They don't need wires because of the glue. And I run the little spacer here, which I cut off just so that everything is spaced the same on both sides, so it feels symmetrical. The next thing in the cheaper mod range is this pair of $20 folding mirrors. Now, on the right hand side you have to run the adapter, which is a bit of a pain. At some stage I might helicoil, drill and helicoil this side of it so I can get rid of this adapter. These only go on one way, so they don't go down any further in that direction, and they fold down further inwards, so you can fold them both in, get them out of the way, aim these down, get them so they're not reflecting or in your way at all, and you know, then you're not going to get them caught. Pretty quick to adjust, get them back out, and yeah, I mean, for 20 bucks I personally think they work about as well as some of the more expensive options out there, and they're available on the internet. You've already got this adapter. This is the adapter that's on the right hand side. There's also a spacer on the left hand side if you're anal and you want to have them both looking the same height. That's normal thread, but this one's actually a reverse thread inside. You can buy this piece, which is actually this piece, but it's like 45 bucks, and yeah, not the end of the world. But yeah, they're a good mod for off-road, and they're not expensive, so you know, give them a try and see if you like them. So while we're up in this neck of the woods, you can see, because I've been touching the bike, the throttle TPMS system is turned on. It's motion sensitive, and it's got about 2/3 of the battery left. I haven't charged this one since we came back from the trip. I charged it before the trip. They last a long time. So the tyre pressure monitors actually go onto your original valves. I'm running tubes because I've got the Pirelli tube type front on, and at the moment for the longer trip I've got the Adventure, so the Tractionator, Motos Tractionator Adventures on, just because I want it to last for the trip, and the Rail Z's that I normally run wouldn't have done that. I replaced my brake pads before the trip, and that's actually a new disc there on my new wheels, and as you can see I'm running just one disc on the front, so I'll go into that. But that's how the tyre pressure monitoring system works, and I've just been cruising around. Lately I run, you know, 32-ish on the rear and 30-ish on the front most of the time. Bump it up a couple of PSI if I'm doing a lot of highway miles, and if I've got a load on. But it's just so nice to be able to glance down at any point and see what your tyre pressures are. And it also has the temperatures of the tyres, so 28 and 30, it's about yeah, 28 or 29 degrees at the moment. So obviously I've got the Tyre, which is going to be in the list of expensive mods, but on the standard one I just had it mounted on the side of the dash in those little triangular pockets that pop out. I just drilled a hole through that and put the screw in the back. So at $65, that's a great mod to know what your tyres are doing. So when I was looking on eBay at accessories that they had for these, a couple of things that came up was these quite beefy, strong pegs. They're not a lot bigger, like only 5mm bigger than the standard pegs width-wise, pretty much the same length. Really good grip, and I got that and the extender for the Sidestand for about $50 for the pair. So just upgraded those to have something that was a little bit lighter and a little bit better grip. These are actually quite spiky and grip your boots really well. You don't want to be sliding around when you're in the mud. In the video on the sundown one, I was using this to clean the bottom of my boots because we picked up so much mud. But yeah, they're also orange. Who doesn't like orange bling? Along with the pegs, one of the things that comes with your bike out of the box is the brake tip lever actually has two positions. Up top is the spikier one for off-road, and it's a little bit higher so that when you're standing you can get your foot onto the tip a little bit easier. So it's worthwhile adjusting that and flipping it round to the other side if you're just riding on the road the rest of the time, most of the time. Then the other way round actually lowers it a bit for if you're sitting, but that costs you nothing other than undoing two nuts. I Loctited those as well when I put them on. While we're talking about things that cost nothing but make a big difference, like adjusting the brake tip, for the same reason you actually do at times want to adjust where your lever is positioned, and that's because different pairs of boots are a different height. So the way to do that is to undo these two lock nuts with a 10mm and use an 8mm on the rod and rotate it, because it's a reverse thread on this side, and that'll either bring up or lower down your foot, your resting position of your gear change. And the reason you want to do that and not adjust it anywhere else is because this is synchronized when you have a service. This is your quick shift sensor, and they synchronize where it's supposed to be and where it's reading. And yeah, you don't want to muck around with it up here. You want to adjust it here. That's why they're there. And you want to have it so that you don't need to lift your foot too far off the resting position to change up, so that your quick shift can work well. And yeah, I find after a service when they recalibrate it, it works really well. So also good on the downshifts. You know, when you're coming into a corner, you just button off, click it down 1 or 2 gears, and set yourself up for the corner, roll through, and then up. So the bike does have 2 powered outlets up in the headlight area, but what I've done here is fit a fused, so it's got a separate fuse of its own power outlet, which goes into my tank bag when I'm on a trip, so I can charge things up. And it pays just to know where your fuses and everything are, you know, for if you're out and about and anything stops working, you know, you've got one lot of fuses there for your accessories, and another lot of fuses under here. Just pays to familiarize yourself with those, and you know, there's spares in there, so you can save yourself an issue if you're out on the road and something happens. So the other modification that a lot of Australian riders are doing is putting these Uni Filter pre-filter socks in your inlet snorkels. So I rode from Birdsville, where I changed it last, to Inaminka, which is all dirt, and then rode from there back to Brisbane, which is only another half a day on dirt. That's my outer air filter skin. My inner one, absolutely nothing's getting through those, and that's what's on the pre-filters. So well worth it. I'll also show you the one from the trip before, which is basically 2 days of riding up the Birdsville track and then riding around Birdsville. So this is the pre-filters that I had on, which I took off in Birdsville, so that was 2 days of riding. I just run zip ties that are removable, so these ones you can just press the lever and put them on and off, but they do a great job. So you lightly oil these. I use this FFT foam filter treatment rather than any of the spray-on ones, and yeah, it's great. I carry a pair of gloves with me for doing it, so I don't get all sticky, but yeah, works well. So I've been really happy with the suspension on the 790R, and you know, coming from the Africa Twin, it's a huge leap forward and a big step up in suspension performance. But one of the reasons I'm happy is because I adjust it and I service it. So, you know, you've got one adjustment down here for your compression for your rear shock. You've got your high speed and low speed compression. Sorry, the other one's rebound. Down the bottom is rebound. Compression here, and on top it's pretty easy. Red, right, rebound, left, compression, and then your preset. You know, you can give it a little bit more on both sides. Because I'm reasonably light, I'm not running any preset and hardly any on my back shock unless I've got all my baggage on, just to even it up, and I've got about the right amount of sag that's required. But an interesting thing, when I had my forks serviced at 25,000 kilometres, the technician found that there was 40 mils too much oil in my rebound side and 30 mils too much in my compression side, and I was finding that the initial hit was a little bit harsh on bumps that I didn't think it should have been harsh on, and he explained that that would be why. So adjustments like that are all actually quite well explained in your manual, and if you go to the comfort settings and set it for that and then go up from there, that's a pretty good base place to be. Of course, depending on your weight, you know, you may have to go for different springs and a different spring for your shock to get your sag right. If you can't get your sag right, you can't get your suspension working correctly to start with. But all of that's pretty well explained. There are plenty of people around with videos doing that. But also on the trip, I found that you know, having someone else there who knows suspension have a look at your bike, and you know, I actually found it was skipping a little bit at the rear on corrugations, and so Michael gave me a suggestion and said, look, you know, just back off your rebound a couple of clicks on the rear and see what that does, and you know, that really settled it down a lot more, as well as dialing your traction control all the way down, you know, so your traction control is not trying to kick in and every time your wheel's in the air cutting power, which makes it more jerky again. So, you know, just mucking around with your settings like that literally costs you nothing and makes a big difference to how much you enjoy the bike and how good it is on a ride. Now, I've spent some money on some other accessories and bits and bobs on the bike, but there's a couple of things, you know, that I've also done that didn't cost a lot. This was a bit of off-cut perspex. I just made a cardboard template. If you pour boiling water on perspex, you can bend it at the top, and I cut that out and put some graphics that I got for the fairing on it. I got a bit of angle iron here that I bent up and put skateboard wheels on, so when your boots are here, you've got that to lean against at the back, and that just makes it so much more comfortable on a long trip when you've got something to lean back against and lock yourself in to the bike. The reason I went for removing the bags was twofold. One, you know, I find them too wide for you know, your leg for riding off-road, but also my baggage hangs down there. But I do like the slim profile. So that's the stuff that I've all done under $100 to it. But funnily enough, going to a single front disc was also under $100. What I did was I went to a sintered front pad. Now those ones have done 7,500 kilometres and still plenty of life in them. Sintered front pad, and actually blocked off the line because I didn't know whether it was going to work or not. So actually Neil made up a blind nut for the line, which I've done because I don't know whether I'd go back to that or not. And to be perfectly honest, on a trip I probably would go back, you know, if I was doing around Australia by road, fully loaded with a passenger and wanted the extra braking power, I probably would. But I haven't at this stage changed my master cylinder, but at some point I may look at getting a 13mm Brembo master cylinder there. I actually don't mind the slightly dead feeling, because what this is doing is it's actually trying to push more fluid, because it should have been running 2 sets of calipers, and it's actually quite dead feeling. It doesn't have a lot of feel to it, but it's also not as grabby off-road. And you know, as much as you do have to ride on the road to get there, I really set my bikes up to be good for the off-road sections, which is why I went the skinnier front and rear wheels, you know, to make it handle better off-road. So the brakes have contributed to that lighter feeling. It feels a little bit more like a 690. Turns better, also does better wheelies if you need to pop your front wheel up, which we all do from time to time. So you know, that's my list of the mods that I've done to mine. Hasn't cost a fortune for those, and they have made a big difference to the overall rideability of the bike. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this one. I'll also come up with one which lists the things that did cost some money. So enjoy, and like and subscribe if you haven't. Cheers, thanks for that.